Hello everybody, I'm Hazel. Welcome back to my channel all about ice cream. And I said last week that this week was going to be a Star Trek themed ice cream. The inspiration for it came from something called the Star Trek Cooking Manual, which was 1978, I think, definitely late 70s. Effectively, it is a cookbook with Star Trek inspired recipes, although interestingly a lot of the recipes in it don't appear anywhere in actual Star Trek. They seem to have been made up purely for this book. What on earth is going on outside? I'm hearing a lot of creaking. Oh, my neighbours have put up a gazebo that's creaking in the wind. That's good. It doesn't look tall enough to actually hit anything in my garden if it falls over. Where'd I got up to? Yes, so the book of Star Trek recipes, which have some little quotations around them that you can't see, that don't actually appear in Star Trek. And I will also add, I do tend to find this type of book a little bit cringe-inducing, because they're almost always written from the perspective of an in-universe character. And that's not the sort of fandom I go for. But I don't think it's purely a 70s cringe thing, because I've got modern ones that are like that. I've got the Fallout cookbook behind me. I don't own it, but I know the Elder Scrolls one is much the same as well. It all seems to have been from an in-universe perspective, which I kind of get. The only person that's going to buy it, it's not serious fans of cooking that are buying these books. It's the fans of the program or the game or whatever element of media it is. Anyway, in this book is a recipe for something called, that I'm not going to pronounce correctly because I don't bother with learning the languages, Prusar Kisan, which is supposedly a custard fruit pie from Vulcan. Again, can find no reference to it where whatsoever in actual any episodes of Star Trek or any of the books, which are only tangentially classed as canon anyway. Anything at all. But it gave me a chance to talk about fruit in a custard base, which is not something I do often. Most fruit ice creams I make are very much in plain cream bases. There are two exceptions. I mean, one of them is now this, so actually really there's one exception that I can think of before, which is rhubarb. I often will put that into a custard base because then it does taste quite nice. Rhubarb and custard is a classic combination. This, though, is going to end up being a peach ice cream in a custard base. And I've already encountered a problem because I'm going to have to make less of it than I thought I was going to. Because I was planning to make 900 grams, and I thought I had more whipping cream than I had single cream. That's inaccurate. But I only bought enough whipping cream. No, I didn't buy enough single cream to make 900 grams of mixture. So I'm going to have to make it in 600 grams anyway. It has to be in multiples of 300 because of the amount of eggs that I'm using, but we'll get on to that. The first thing it starts with, though, is making a peach pulp. It doesn't actually have an awful lot of peach juice in it, which worries me slightly, because peach is not the strongest flavoured fruit. It depends how good quality your peaches are. These ones are shop-bought peaches, so they're not going to be wonderful. But it only has, like I said, 10% of it. So originally we were going to need 90 grams. I actually only need 45. I'm just trying to find my little knife. Is that a little knife? That feels like a bread knife. That is a bread knife. That's not the knife I want. That's the sharpener. Is that the little knife? I'm trying to do it without knocking the camera too much. This is really useless. I had a little, it's not the little knife, but it's not too big a knife. I had I bought some funnels, and they came with this kind of sieve to them, but they don't work. They just block up the funnel, and then I can't get anything through them. Let's just take the lid off of that. This peach feels soft. They are peaches, incidentally, not nectarines. I prefer the peaches. People tell me nectarines don't taste any different to peaches. I disagree. I can tell you the difference between a peach and a nectarine. I'm also just going to do this above the... I don't often cut peaches, I generally just eat them. You can get variants of peach, by the way. You can get ones that the stone is easier to remove than others. I can't remember what they called it now. It's something like attached stone versus non-attached. This is obviously an attached variant. I don't want to get too much peach juice all over my hands. That's going to be sticky. Oh, I don't want it to be sticky. Let's try the spoon, see if we can get rid of the stone. The easier to core ones are the non-attached ones, because the stone just kind of slides right off. Now I feel like one peach is probably going to be enough to get me 45 grams. It's actually quite strong tasting for a peach. So it's a tie between, do I just blend up this one peach and then possibly have to do another one, or do I blend two peaches but then possibly waste one of them? I'd rather not waste my peaches, so let's do this first. What doesn't it like? I'm sure this is the right... Ah, now it's fine. I think I need to blend more peaches, or at least move that around. How much does a peach weigh? A peach weighs 94 grams exactly. The stone weighed 14. There should be enough peach in there then. It's just not blending very well because it's not taking up much space. Bring it in a little bit more. I also just realised 10% of 600 is not 45. I was working on halving it for some reason. I need 60 grams, so this might actually not quite be enough, which is even more annoying. Probably as much as I'm going to manage to get out of it. And I was going to put it into the cafetiere, but with that little amount, it's not going to reach the threshold. So, where's my little scraper? There's the little scraper. I actually managed to pick up something for the first time. Ow, that's got surprisingly hot. Maybe that shouldn't surprise me. Maybe I'm just being stupid. Let me just give that a little wipe as well. Otherwise, I'm about to put my saucepan on top of peach juice. There we go. All right. So I think possibly the best thing to do would be scrape it out into the sieve and then probably manually pass it through the sieve. Nothing about this is going very well so far. It's been 10 minutes of failure. It smells very peachy though. That's something. I'm just going to scrape off as much as I can. I don't think I'm going to have 60 grams here, which is slightly annoying that I'm going to have to put another peach in. I'll do my best. I'll get what I can out of it. The recipe for this, by the way, was derived from the one for ginger, which used crystallised ginger, what you might now know as stem ginger. The original recipe had no sugar in it because what ginger is preserved in is sugar, syrup. Sugar at a high enough concentration is a preservative. Or it's a preservative for bacteria. The jury's still out on whether it's preservative for fungus and that sort of thing. Right, let's just start trying to press through my peach. Oh, it all comes out a bit than I thought might. Might do okay. So I had to kind of reverse engineer the recipe. It's the only thing that came close to putting a fruit in a custard base. I don't think many fruits really suit a custard base. Fruit is better used on a plain cream base. Otherwise the fruit flavour tends to get a little bit hidden. Oh, this is hurting my hand already. This is why I wanted to use the cafetiere and the plunge. We're at 43 though, so if this had been a 45 gram recipe, we'd have been done by now. At least practically. This is going to be so annoying. This isn't going to work at 60. But it's only just going to not work, which is possibly even worse. I always used to find this when I used to catch a really convoluted train route to and from work. And annoyingly, the one there was always fine, but the one back, one of the trains only had to be 3 minutes late and it messed up the entire rest of the journey. I'm on 55 grams now. And I always said I would rather miss it by half an hour than a minute. Unfortunately, the first part of that train relay was often held to make room for a fast train coming through. So you'd start off absolutely fine. That fast train would come through and you'd be sitting there thinking, right, if it leaves right this minute, I'll make it. And then you'd be held up for a little bit longer. I need to try and get just over 3 grams more out of this because I don't want to use a whole other peach to get 3 grams. So often what would happen is I'd end up pulling into the railway station and seeing my train... No! Get that out. Seeing my train leave, which was far more annoying than sitting there thinking there's no way I could have ever made that. This is a bit like that. I don't think I'm going to make 60 no matter how much I press it. But I really don't want to use another peach. So I may just have to accept slightly less peach than I originally wanted. I don't know what, that is 59.47. Come on, a little bit more. 60. I think that was the closest one I've managed yet. That means that peach can go back in the tray, which can go back in the fridge. Right. And then let's move on. So then we have the single cream, which is at 40% in this recipe. So it was 360, but now it's only going to be 240, which is fine because I bought a 300 milliliter pot. I did think I had a little bit of single cream left over from last week, but I couldn't then find it. So I probably did throw it away. I would just say 240. That's going to be most of this pie. I don't need to be too cautious with how I pour it to start with. 10, 20, 30, and 40. I may as well get my whipping cream out. Now, whipping cream, I think, I'll have to look it back up in a minute. I think whipping cream is at 25%, so I'm only going to need one pot of this. Yes, whipping cream is at 25%, so I only need 150 of whipping cream, which now means I have an extreme surplus of whipping cream. They've got decent dates on them. They might still be all right for next week's ice cream. So let's add 150 of the whipping cream. $100. $40 just coming up. $150. Oh, just spilt that. I need to clean that up. That's going to create an absolute mess in my fridge. But I'm just going to do a brief pause whilst I clean that up, which, to be fair, is not the end of the world because we were coming towards the end of the filming time for the camera anyway. Back in a moment. And as promised, back after a very short pause. I don't even think anything in the background has changed. I'm going to add the eggs. Now, I did pre-separate them. I separated 3 because when I separated them, I thought I was still making 900 grams. So let's very carefully just plop 2 of them in. 2. I'll freeze that one. Eggs freeze really well, so I'll freeze that yolk and use it for something further down the line. And then it's just the caster sugar, which in this recipe is at 20%, so 120 grams. Now, it may not seem like an awful lot of fruit is being used in this, and to be fair, it's not. It's a lot lower than the percentage I use in my cream base, where the fruit is 20% of the entire recipe. It's exactly half what I use in the cream base. But because you're heating it, the heat would encourage the proteins in the well, in my case, cream, but dairy, to unravel, which will encourage them to take on some flavour. So it does end up quite a flavourful ice cream. Or at least it does with rhubarb. Fingers crossed with peach. So let's turn the extractor hood on. Take the cat lock off. I don't know if I mentioned in the last video, by the way, the cats are fully discharged from the vets now. One of them already had been, but the other one wasn't healing that well. But she is now fine. She's doing well. So everybody in the house is much happier. Now we don't have to take weekly visits to the vet. I think at one point she went 3 times in a week. Was it 3 times in a week? Yeah, it was 3 times in a week. We had the first checkup. Then we had to go and get the antibiotics injected. Then you have to do a second dose of the antibiotics. But it was all working. So the cats are doing well. It's been nowhere near as hot this week, so they've been able to be put away into the living room. I'm not worried about them having to come here and encounter heat and dairy and all sorts of things that might harm them. Just taking a moment whilst it's not really forming a custard yet to get my jug down. I've still got one of my spoons over there. I have. So this is just a case of whisk it until the custard is formed. It feels like quite a thin mixture. There's not really much water in here. It's similar in fat to how my normal ones are. Just feels very thin today for some reason. Definitely incorrect. I followed the recipe. It's a shame it's not going to make as much as I'd planned, but I happen to be off work this week, so I could always go and make a bit more if I'd be bothered to go out to the shop on a different day. Just see if a custard has formed. Yeah, pretty much. That's an OCD thing, by the way, knowing that something is finished but still wanting to do a little bit more to it. It was really problematic when I was painting my dining room because I kept on kind of going, oh no, if I just spread that paint a little bit thinner, it'll be a little bit neater. But the problem with walls that have already been plastered and painted is they tend to be very absorbent of paint. I think at least one of my walls had 4 coats. All of them had 3, which meant the calculations for the amount of paint I needed were off because they're all the calculators are based on 2 coats. So I think in future my rule for that is going to be whatever it says, double it. Seems like a sensible number. Right, that can now go in the fridge, where that will chill and develop overnight. It might actually not end up getting churned tomorrow. If it does, it'll end up getting churned very late tomorrow because I have places to be. So this could be something that I churn in a couple of days, so it'll really develop in flavour, which is good given it doesn't have as much of the fruit in the first place. And then, but once I am ready to churn it, you'll see it back here for a re-whisk, a second strain, and then the churning. I had a little bit of a panic because I thought the ice cream machine had broken. It took a little while for the power button to light up after I'd turned the actual power on. But it's fine, it's pre-chilling in the background, so it obviously just had a moment. This is actually 2 days later. I ended up being out far longer than I thought I would be yesterday. My cats were very cross. I left them without food. I mean, I fed them before I left and after I got back. But still, as far as they're concerned, they were starved. That is very peachy. We're just remixing it in a little bit. So it is going to get a re-whisk, this one. It's also going to get another strain as well. Actually, I think this will actually be the mixture's first strain. I strained the peach, but I didn't do anything to the mixture. So actually this will be the first strain of the mixture itself. Just going to scrape all of that out. This is not going to be going into one of my fancy tubs because there's going to be nowhere near enough of it. I wish I'd bought more cream. I do actually have to go out later on to get some things. So, but I could buy more. I've got 3 more peaches. And 1 peach just about did a 600-gram batch. So I should have enough to make an awful lot more of this if I want to. Oh, but I have to get more eggs as well. I'll think on that. So let's get the whisk attachment in. It's building up into another very hot week, and actually probably even hotter than the previous one, which slightly affects the plans for what I was going to be doing on, hang on, that's not that, that is the mini chopper, let's plug the stand mixer in. It kind of affects my plans for Saturday, which will in turn affect my plans for next week's ice cream. Most of me is still thinking, let me just get it started to whisk. Most of me is still thinking I am going to go. I'm just going to be unhappy and moaning about how hot it is. But a bit of me is thinking, is it actually even sensible? But then I've got other people that I'm going with, so I don't want to let everybody else down. I could take one of my very unfashionable hats. I don't do fashion. You may have, not that you see an awful lot of what I'm wearing whenever I do these videos, but you may be able to tell I don't do fashion. But I have some hats that are very unfashionable. But very good at protection from the sun and the heat, and that's what you need really in a hat. Oh, there's a thing on it. Oh, no it hasn't, it's just the pattern of it. That's fine. That has probably been re-whisked sufficiently. So I probably don't want to knock the whisk attachment itself this time, because if it's picked up on little bits of the peach, that's fine. I don't want them back in there. There's nothing wrong with having them in there, by the way. If you like your ice cream to have a little bit of fruit texture to it, that's fine. I like the very smooth flavours and textures, which is why I generally strain anything like that out. But the ice cream has been formulated to include those little bits, so it's not going to ruin anything. The little fruit lumps themselves might be a little bit on the icy side, but it shouldn't be too bad because it has been accounted for. Right, not having much of this. I don't want to waste any of it, so I'll let that strain through. That is peachy. That is nice. Maybe we'll come more through more in the final ice cream. I'm not even picking that much up from the eggs. There's not that much egg yolk in this one, nowhere near as much as my standard custard base. It's 3 times less. So I'm thinking maybe I should do more fruit ice creams as custards. Depends on the fruit. Right, that's that much in. And then I want to really spread the bowl out and get every bit of ice cream that I can, every bit of mixture out that I can. That's rather poorly positioned of me for my stand mixer. Let's come around this way and try it here instead. If I've got loads of mixture, I don't really mind too much if a little bit stays in the bowl. I just drink it. But when I've only got 600 grams of it in the first place, I probably do want as much of it in as I can get. Peaches are one of my favourite fruits. I'm slightly unfortunate because my favourite fruit I'm allergic to, so I don't get to eat that. But then peaches are probably a close second. And I do prefer peaches to nectarines. I know they taste the same, but they don't feel the same. And I actually kind of like that fluff on a peach. Anyway, that has now strained. The ice cream machine has been pre-chilling for 6 minutes. By the time I set up, it'll be a little bit longer. So it's almost time to get this churning. And then just time to do the swirly pour. I might even bring the little, no, I need the little scraper. Where's the little scraper gone? I don't have a little scraper. Let's have this one then. No, let's not have that one. That's not more flexible, and actually it's split. Why is none of my kitchen equipment ever in a good condition? Actually, I can answer that. I tend to buy it cheap, but the problem with buying cheap is you then need to replace it quicker. It's a false economy. Right, let's start slowly pouring this. I can't leave it too long, otherwise you're going to end up with some of it more churn than the rest, but try and scrape a little bit more out of the jug. Because I really want all of the ice cream that I can get from this one, given I'm not getting as much as I usually would like. But it is one of my favourites. At least it should be one of my favourites. The fruit is one of my favourites. That now gets to churn, probably not for too long, given that there's not an awful lot of it, and be back here once it has finished churning. And I think we might have managed to reach the paddle stage, so I actually just need to get out the little scraper first. I've very sadly discovered that my timer machine now doesn't work. I don't know why. It stopped working in the really high heat, and I thought maybe it just doesn't like the heat. I don't know why mechanical. Oh, we're almost stuck to the paddle, not quite. That's good, it's going to fall off. I didn't really understand why high heat might affect a mechanical embossing machine, but it had worked absolutely fine the week before. It had been treated no differently. It definitely isn't working. So that's a shame. And also really inconvenient, because that was actually very handy to label up the ice creams. I mean, I remember that this is peach, because I do have a memory capable of lasting a couple of days. But still. risk of sounding very old, they don't make these things like they used to, because I was a kid playing with my grandma's one. I wasn't treating that particularly carefully, and that lasted for years. This is very peachy, which is good, obviously, but somewhat surprising given there's not that much peach in it. The recipe was originally based around ginger, which is a much stronger flavour. I was a little bit concerned that 10% peach wouldn't be enough to do much, but that is really strong. So I think this will be a good one. Just need to get it to freeze. And when will that be tested? Possibly tomorrow. Actually, no, definitely not tomorrow. So, a couple of days' time. Oh no, I didn't want to reach on it again. I'm just sitting here enjoying the bit that I couldn't scrape out of the bowl. So I will see you back in a couple of days' time for the peach tasting, which will hopefully go very well. And now on this very hot day, it is time to taste the peach custard ice cream. If I look a little bit red, it's because I'm only just back from the event that I was going to, which I'll talk about in a bit because it influences next week's ice cream. But I'm going to taste this one first because it might start melting. It's not actually been the hottest day of the year, but it's certainly the hottest day I've gone outside. That's good. I was about to say the peach gets lost, but no, it doesn't. It just takes a couple of moments for it to come in. My cat's about to join us. Or maybe. I saw a little face. No, feel better of it? Okay. A small amount more. I am coming to the conclusion, I think I generally do prefer the texture of the custard ice creams. It's just that the egg yolk flavour doesn't necessarily complement everything. It kind of works in this. Oh gosh, it's a different cat. Hello. We don't eat custard. Ice cream. Hello, my little sweetheart. Hello. Oh gosh, both of them. Okay. Hello, darlings. I'm afraid you may be getting an unflattering view of one of them. I might end up editing this out. Okay, one of them's just gone off. Hello. Little darling, you are. No, please don't knock it over. Yes, you love the camera, don't you? It's your camera now. You've rubbed yourself all over it. You've also got your fur in my ice cream. Okay, you came to distribute your fur over the place and then leave me. That's fine. Last bit. What was being discussed before my cat's interrupted. I think I was discussing the egg yolk in ice cream, and the problem is if the reason that you're making a custard ice cream in that way is to get the egg yolk flavour, if you've then got something that doesn't complement the egg yolk flavour, that works. I don't think it would work with my normal custard. I don't think it would work with the 15% egg yolk version of custard ice cream. But on the 5%, that was good. I still think I do prefer fruits in plain cream, genuinely speaking, but it was a good ice cream. So yes, where I was at the Tewkesbury Medieval Festival. It was very warm. There was a little bit of a breeze, which was nice. And also I'd thought to freeze some water bottles, so we had cold water all day, which was also quite good. Also, my friend's sun cream worked really well. I don't think either of us got burnt, which is astonishing. And I was there just as general interest anyway, but also I was looking for inspiration for next week's ice cream. And there are a few things. There are at least two that are coming to mind. And then there is a third potential as well. So I don't know exactly what it's going to end up being yet. And it's only 2 days away that I'm making it, but I don't know exactly which one I'm going to make. But there are a few things that could come from that. So I did end up getting the inspiration I needed for next week. Therefore, next week won't be lavender. I think we're finally on lavender the week after that, though, which will be nice because then the lavender will have had about a month to infuse into the sugar. So that should come out really quite strong. So I've got the next couple of weeks as a plan. Do I have the one after it? Have I already got the one after it? I think I have, actually. I think I do have the one after that as well. So I've got a few ideas. For now, it's very hot. I'm still very overheated from the drive. Although we did take my car because my car has aircon and my friend's does not. Which also meant I did all the driving. So it's been very hot. I'm very tired. I've tasted the peach custard ice cream. I'm going to go and edit the video, trying to get it out in time for tomorrow, and just enjoy sitting in front of a fan for the rest of the evening. So see you back here next week, hopefully a bit cooler.